Mongolia, the wide, empty steppe, carries the weight of the deadliest empire the world has ever known. From here, one man built the largest connected empire in human history, linking cities that had never spoken to each other before. But he built it through fire, terror, and some of the bloodiest slaughter ever recorded. In this video, we're going to take you through the entire history of the Mongol Empire, from a starving boy left for dead on the steppe, all the way through to the empire's final collapse. We'll cover the betrayals, the massacres, the golden roads, the plague, and the bloodline that still lives on today. Using AI-restored imagery and rare historical sources, we bring this brutal world back to life. How does one broken boy unite a shattered people? And how does his empire end up tearing itself apart? Let's begin at the beginning. People have lived on the wide Mongolian steppe for thousands of years. Archaeologists have found tools and campsites dating back to at least 800,000 BC, left behind by early hunters who followed herds of wild animals across the grass. Later, small groups of horse riders and shepherds moved across the land in tents, following the seasons the way their fathers had. For centuries, bigger powers lived nearby and looked down on them. To the south sat China, rich, walled, and proud, often calling the steppe people wild and unworthy of respect. The word Mongol likely comes from an old term meaning brave or fearless, though its exact roots are still debated. Legend says the Mongol people descend from a blue-gray wolf and a fallow deer, two wild animals who crossed a great lake and became the first ancestors of the tribe. It is only a story, but it says something true. This was always meant to be a people shaped by struggle. That struggle shows up early and personal. As a boy, Temujin, the future Genghis Khan, kills his own half-brother in a fight over a stolen fish. Family loyalty, even then, was never guaranteed. Betrayal could come from anywhere, even from your own blood. For centuries, the tribes of the steppe stayed divided, fighting each other more than they fought anyone else. But one boy born into poverty and abandonment was about to change everything. The question was no longer where these people came from. It was how a broken, scattered people could ever become one nation, and one force the world could not ignore. Temujin did not build his power alone. For years, he fought beside Wang Khan, a powerful steppe leader who acted almost like a father to him. But loyalty on the steppe was never safe. When Temujin grew strong, Wang Khan turned on him and tried to destroy him. Temujin survived, rebuilt his forces, and defeated Wang Khan for good. That betrayal became the turning point. In 1206, the scattered tribes of the steppe gathered at a great meeting called a Kurultai. There, they declared Temujin their supreme ruler and gave him a new name, Genghis Khan, meaning something close to universal ruler. This was no ordinary king. He broke apart the old tribal system, where power passed down through bloodlines and birth. Instead, he built an army based on skill and loyalty to him alone. A shepherd's son could rise to command thousands of men if he proved himself in battle. This created real anger among the old noble families, who lost the power they had always assumed was theirs by blood. But Genghis Khan did not care. He created the Yasa, a strict code of law applied equally to everyone, noble or not. He also organized his army into units of 10, a system so effective that militaries still use versions of it today. For the first time, the steppe had one law, one leader, and one purpose. But peace at home was never going to be enough for Genghis Khan. To the south and west lay wealthy kingdoms who had always mocked people like him. He was about to make sure they never mocked him again. To the west stood the Khwarezmian Empire, a rich and powerful Muslim kingdom stretching across Persia and Central Asia. Its cities were walled, wealthy, and full of trade. Its rulers believed the Mongols were simple horsemen, not a real threat. That belief nearly destroyed everyone. Genghis Khan sent a peaceful trade caravan to Khwarezm, hoping to open trade between the two powers. Instead, the governor of the border city of Otrar accused the merchants of being spies, seized their goods, and executed them all. When Genghis Khan sent envoys to demand justice, the Khwarezmian ruler had them killed too, some say by shaving their heads and sending them home in shame. For a leader who saw loyalty and respect as sacred, this was unforgivable. Genghis Khan did not ask twice. He gathered his full force and rode west. City after city was given one chance to surrender. Otra refused. When it finally fell, its governor was reportedly killed by having molten silver poured into his eyes and ears, a punishment as brutal as the insult itself. Other cities that resisted were destroyed completely, their populations killed by the tens of thousands, their skilled workers spared only to serve the empire. Within 2 years, one of the richest empires in Asia had been wiped from the map. The cost was staggering, entire cities gone, but the lesson spread faster than any army could travel. No one insulted the Mongols twice. This is the truth at the center of Genghis Khan's rise. He does not forgive, and he does not forget. With his enemies crushed and his reputation now a weapon of its own, the Mongol Empire was ready to grow into something the world had never seen before. Genghis Khan died in 1227, but his empire did not stop growing. His son Ogedei Khan took over and pushed the borders even further, from Korea in the east to the edges of Europe in the west. This was the empire's golden age, and it did not just conquer, it connected. Ogedei built a new capital called Karakoram, deep in the steppe, and turned it into a meeting point for the whole world. Merchants, priests, and scholars from a dozen different faiths lived side by side there, something almost unheard of anywhere else at the time. Ogedei also built the Yam, a relay system of horse riders and stations stretching thousands of miles, letting messages cross the entire empire faster than any system before it, much like a Mongol version of a modern postal service. Trade along the Silk Road became safer than it had ever been, protected the whole way from China to Europe. Today, a giant stone turtle monument still sits near the ruins of Karakoram, one of the few physical pieces of that golden capital left standing. But this piece was never shared equally. Millions living in conquered lands paid heavy taxes and lived under constant Mongol control, golden age or not. And underneath all this success sat one dangerous problem. Genghis Khan had never set a clear rule for who should inherit power after his children were gone. The empire was united by loyalty to one bloodline, not by any lasting system. For now, the roads were open and the empire was rich. But the peace built on one family's authority was about to run out of family members everyone could agree on. When Ogedei's line of leaders proved weak, the empire's unity cracked wide open. 2 of Genghis Khan's grandsons, Monk and Erik Bok, both claimed the right to rule, and both held their own Kurultai, each declaring himself the true Khan. For the first time, Mongol royals were not just fighting outside enemies. They were fighting each other. This war between brothers, known as the Toluid Civil War, ended with Erik Bok defeated and humiliated, forced to submit to his brother Kublai Khan. But the damage was already done. Once it became normal for a Khan to be challenged by his own family, it never stopped. Rival cousins raised their own armies. Distant relatives declared independence rather than bow to a ruler chosen through blood and violence instead of clear law. The empire that Genghis Khan had built as one unstoppable force split into 4 separate khanates, each ruled by a different branch of his family, each acting more like a rival kingdom than a united whole. There is a bitter irony here. The same bloodline that had once united a broken people now tore its own empire into pieces. The law code built to apply fairly to everyone had no answer for the one question that mattered most: who rules next? By the late 1200s, the largest connected empire in human history still existed on maps, but it no longer existed as one nation. It had become 4 empires wearing the same name, slowly drifting apart, and slowly becoming strangers to each other and to the world they had once ruled together. Kublai Khan's branch of the family held onto China the longest, ruling as the Yuan dynasty. But over time, his descendants stopped acting like Mongol warriors and started acting like Chinese emperors, adopting Chinese customs, Chinese dress, and Chinese court rituals. The very identity that once made the Mongols unstoppable slowly faded away. In 1368, Chinese rebels rose up and drove the last Yuan emperor out of Beijing, ending Mongol rule over China for good. Far to the north, Karakoram, once the beating heart of the empire, was left behind and eventually looted and burned by Chinese forces. Today, almost nothing of that great capital remains above the ground. But even as Mongol political power crumbled, the empire's true legacy was already spreading in a different way. The roads and trade routes the Mongols had protected for so long carried more than silk and spices. Paper money, first used by the Mongols to pay for their vast empire, made its way west and reshaped how Europe thought about currency. Gunpowder, developed in China, traveled the same protected roads into the hands of European armies. And the Venetian trader Marco Polo, who lived for years at Kublai Khan's court, brought back stories of the empire that changed how Europe imagined the world beyond its own borders. The empire that once ruled by fear had, without meaning to, connected the whole world for the first time. But its political story was already ending. Pushed back onto the open steppe they had once ruled from, the Mongols returned to the same grasslands where their story began, and the world moved on without them, straight into the modern age that was about to begin. In 1921, Mongolia declared itself independent, and by 1924, it became a communist country closely tied to the Soviet Union. For most of the 20th century, Mongolia stayed cut off from much of the world, and even the memory of Genghis Khan was banned, seen as too closely tied to the old ruling class. Everything changed in 1990, when Mongolia peacefully ended communist rule and opened itself back up to democracy and the outside world. Genghis Khan quickly returned as a national hero, his face now on money, buildings, and a giant 50-meter statue standing on the open steppe. Today, Mongolia is home to around 3.5 million people, and its capital, Ulaanbaatar, has grown into a busy, modern city surrounded by the same wide grasslands that raised its most famous son. Tourists now travel from across the world to ride horses and sleep in traditional jairs, chasing a small taste of the old nomadic life. But modern Mongolia still struggles. Herding families face brutal winters called dzuds, which can wipe out entire herds in a single season, while the economy leans heavily on mining, leaving many families exposed when prices fall. This is a nation still shaped by the same forces that built its empire, both its strength and its struggle. The steppe once produced a broken boy who united the world through fire and fear, and that same restless, unforgiving land still tests everyone who calls it home today. If you enjoyed this journey through the history of the Mongol Empire, please like this video and subscribe. It genuinely helps us keep making these. And there are many more empires, cities, and stories still to come. And as always, we'll see you in the past.